and happy Hispanic Heritage Month on behalf of Lone Star College, Houston North. I am Professor Tony Diaz. I am in the English department and I teach Mexican American literature. And I'm the faculty advisor for the student group, the Latin American Student Organization. And today we're happy to introduce you to some of the team here at the college, tell you a little bit about what we do, but also build a bridge more profoundly into the Latino community. Today we have some special guests. Also, if you stick around, there's going to be a chance for you to win free copies of The House on Mango Street, because we're also working with the National Endowments for the Arts for the Big Read. And the focus of the Big Read is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. So if you send your email or put your name and email in the comments section or below in the chat box, we're going to make sure that you can get a copy of this book. And there's going to be some other workshops as well. You can also find out how to get a copy of Sandra Cisneros' new book, Martita, Do You Remember Me?, courtesy of our friends at the Houston Public Library. And there'll be some other workshops and different classes that they organize. We're also teaming up with the Alley Theater. And our main goal is to make sure that your family libraries are well stocked and you've got a lot of great festivities for Hispanic Heritage Month. We have a lot to tell you. We have other friends from the college who will be joining us, but I do want to bring onto the screen our guests for today. Hola, ¿cómo están? Jessica and Manuel, great to see you both.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for having us. This is exciting.
Yeah. No, our pleasure. And of course, we were hoping to have you live, but you know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
We had to adjust and of course accommodate this pandemic, which is a real issue. So we do hope that folks are observing CDC guidelines, and we will be having some outdoor events next week, including a salsa contest.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I am challenging people. I'll be challenging folks.
All right.
But that too will be socially distant. If you can do salsa socially distant, we're going to create that, the way to do that. But we miss being in the community. So we want to make sure that we get the people's minds, hearts, and then pancitas, because there'll be some food there as well. So we're also going to be talking about well-being and how that impacts our culture in school, in the community, and how that is represented in the book The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. I want to say hello, and then I'm going to bring up on the screen a more formal introduction of our two guests, as well as a little discussion of what we're talking about today. But first, I want to say hi and tell us where you're both remotely checking in from.
We're coming to you from Austin, Texas, Tejaslan, right? And so this is where we base our work. Of course, as you know, as you're mentioning, as so much of us have shifted to online stuff. The wonderful thing is that we've been able to broadcast and connect with so many of our community and the work we've been doing now all over the country, different countries as well, kind of tune in. So that's been great. But our home is here in Austin, but our roots are San Anto. So
that's fantastic. And then, of course, there's a big legacy of people going from Houston to San Antonio to Austin, and we are all definitely connected.
Oh yeah.
Now, and in a little bit, we're going to be joined by Ms. Jones, who is in charge of student life. But just to give folks an idea of what we'll be talking about. So our discussion today to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month festivities here at Lone Star College, Houston North, it's called The Good Life with Good Books and Good Health. We're also focusing on The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. And some of our partners are the National Endowment for the Arts Big Read campaign, of course, Lone Star College, Houston North, Student Life, the Latin American Student Organization, also Lone Star College, Houston North Library System, Nuestra Palabra, Latino writers having their say, the Houston Public Library, and the Alley Theater. We'll be streaming from 1:30 to 3 p.m. So we hope folks will click like, will share this. Hey, please like the Lone Star College Houston North Facebook page. Tell your friends about it. And what's neat about this is you can come back to it later because we'll save it. We'll also download it. And right now, I don't want to embarrass you, Dr. Zamarripa, but I am going to read your bio. So,
all right.
The other thing I tell students, because we also have the radio show, but I always do like to go through the entire biography of someone that they submit, especially because as a student, people are always telling you about getting jobs, careers.
Right.
We're not always told exactly what that means.
It's true.
That's true.
That's very true. Yeah.
And this is a good way to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, Dr. Manuel X Zamarripa, LPC-S, is the director and co-founder of the Institute of Chicana, Chicano Psychology, based in Austin, Texas, where he conducts community workshops and professional development training for educators. So not just students and community members, but educators and mental health professionals. You're helping the leaders who help us on issues related to Chicanx, Latinx, wellness, cultural identity, and cultural revitalization. That's powerful. We'll probably start talking after we go over your bios and introductions about cultural identity, because you mentioned Chicanx, Latinx, Latino, and revitalization. But what I admire is that you come at it from a Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx affirmative framework. Dr. Zamarripa has presented and delivered training on Chicanx, Latinx well-being, cultural responsiveness, social justice, decolonizing psychology, psychosocial factors of academic achievement, which is what we're all about, and we're addressing that in different ways, and leadership. His publications, peer-reviewed journal articles, and book chapters, felicitaciones, that's awesome. They focus on mental health, assessment, and teaching of Chicanx and Latinx populations. Of course, Lone Star College Houston North has over 40% Latino student population.
Yeah.
He's also Dean of Counseling at Austin Community College. His 20 years of clinical experience includes working with individuals, adults, adolescents, couples, and families in community and education settings, rural and urban, from varied economic and cultural background. He's licensed professional counselor and approved supervisor and received his PhD. First of all, that's a great accomplishment. I think not enough folks from our communities have PhDs, so that's fantastic. From the University of Wisconsin-Madison in counseling psychology. His master's is from Our Lady of the Lake in counseling psychology, and his BA is from the University of Notre Dame in psychology. So thank you so much, and welcome to Lone Star College Houston North. We appreciate you coming and being a part of this.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
And I had the pleasure of course, I've met you both in person, had you on the radio show. Jessica, I want to pay respect to your full name, and I asked you on the radio show how to pronounce it correctly, and I still needed help with that. Jessica, help me pronounce your middle name brilliantly.
We can all practice our Nawat, right? That's my name for my Siembra de Nombre, for my Tona Lama reading that the elders did for me. So I have a lot of the energy of Tlazoteo. And so my name is Tlazotiani. Tlazotiani.
Jessica Tlazotliani Zamarripa.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. And you know what? We'll talk about identity. We also want to talk about, you mentioned the Nawa language. We have to talk about that as well as we kick things off. We might not even get to the but we're going to learn a lot. Jessica's a longtime Austin mommy activist and community organizer working towards social justice within the Latinx community, and shouts out because every movement, every causa has benefited from the work of mujeres, not always fully recognized. She is the daughter of a long ago 1930s San Anto Chicano father and a South Texas Vaquero family mother. Jessica is a mommy to 3. She's co-founder of the community-based Institute of Chicanx Psychology. Previously, Jessica was an organizer for the collective Latina Mami for more than 15 years. Her community home is Calpuli, Takali, Tayo.
Teocalli. Yeah, Teocalli Teoyolo. That means a sacred home for our hearts. Sacred.
And thank you for helping me. And again, I think a lot of times people think of Spanish as the only language that is organic to our community, but you're touching on Nawa, and there's many other indigenous languages and histories too that we need to bring into the picture. So thank you. And the flourishing of her culture and community is her driving force in life. Jessica's a member of Academia Kawatli in Austin, a local language and cultural revitalization school program for Spanish-speaking Mexican-American elementary students. She is also a past council member of Alma de Mujer Center for Social Change. Jessica is a danzante de la luna in Danzante Mexica. Jessica received her BA in Chicano Studies from the University of Texas at Austin. Her writing, dancing, and community work is medicine toward liberation, healing, and the flourishing of her children and her people. That is wonderful. That is powerful. Round of applause for you and all that you do. We're doing introductions. I'm going to bring into the picture Ernesto Valenzuela. And Ernesto, how are you?
Hi, buenas tardes. My name is Ernesto Valenzuela.
Great to have you here. And we're going to have you talk a little bit about the work that you do, especially with the Big Read campaign. And then we're also going to bring in Ms. Jones in a little bit. I'm going to throw it to her in about a minute. But Ernesto, welcome. And tell us some of the behind the scenes leading up to this moment for Hispanic Heritage here at Lone Star College, Houston North.
So this is a great moment, a great opportunity. One of the things I wanted to point out is that the Big Read grant, Lone Star College was the only college in the Houston area to receive this grant. One of the things, a great way to bring literacy awareness to the community, the youth, especially the Hispanic culture that we have here in Houston. Just wanted to point out our Houston North is one of our newest college in the Lone Star College system. And we have 4 locations, our Greenspoint, our Victory, our Fairbanks, and our newest location, which is Fallbrook. And we're going to be hosting many events, book discussions. We have partnered up with the Houston Public Library to host multiple discussions, actually to have Sandra Cisneros virtual. And we also have worked with the Alley Theater to also have a virtual event. As you mentioned earlier, Tony, we would love to have this in person, get to meet Sandra in person. But in the reality, it is very difficult to do any in person. So what other way to bring it as we can virtual, which the advantage that we could reach as many audience as we can in this virtual environment.
No, that's fantastic. Appreciate that you're doing a lot to get this national grant to Lone Star College, Houston North. We're so proud that we've been recognized nationally. More importantly, it gives us a chance to bring some of our familia desde Austin deep into the community. You mentioned Fallbrook, of course, shout out to Aldine, and shout out to each campus. We've got the Fairbanks campus as well. We have a Latin American student organization at each of those facilities, and we want to make sure that every student has a chance to get involved. And speaking of student life, we want to bring out Ms. Jones because she dedicates her time and energy to making sure that students have a full experience here at the college. Ms. Jones, thank you for joining us. Thanks so much that you do for student life. I mentioned Latin American Student Organization. If it wasn't for the work that you do, we wouldn't have a student group or a student government. So why does that mean so much to you?
So student engagement, student involvement means so much to me because the students need to know that they do have a family outside of their personal family. And of course, here at Houston North, that's what we strive to be: the Office of Student Life, the Division of Student Services, our college president, our student organizations. We are all very family oriented, and we just believe in letting our students know that they have someone else that they can count on, depend on for support, be it emotional, physical, whatever that case may be, while they are pursuing their higher education journey. So student life, student engagement, we are definitely all about connections, about networking, about resources, i.e. just having these speakers available for us here today. So again, thank you to you all for joining us, for putting on this presentation for our student body, for our campus community, because these are things that our students need to hear, that our community needs to hear. And we're very, very excited, especially for the kickoff of Hispanic Heritage Month. I know Professor Diaz kind of talked a little bit about our salsa that that we're going to be doing next week. So I'm super, super excited about putting this event on. This is actually going to be our first in-person event since the pandemic. So I'm super ecstatic about bringing this opportunity to our college and our campus community. So thank you again, Professor Diaz, for sharing that. Thank you for promoting that. And I do hope to see all of our community members, our students, our families out at this event on next Thursday here at Fallbrook.
That's awesome. And that's going to be fun. I think people are getting a lot of fun out of that particular event. Let's mention a few other ones. So on Wednesday, September 22nd, the Latin American Student Organization is hosting an immigration forum.
Yes.
That's with board certified immigration lawyer Carolina Ortuzar Diaz from Monty and Ramirez. So we welcome our members to participate and community members.
Yes.
That's been an annual program, hasn't it?
Yes, this is our second time actually bringing this back around. And of course, anything that we do virtual is open to the community. So yes, we will definitely ensure that that information is pushed out and shared on social as well. So that way everybody will be able to join along and participate with that event as well.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. And again, thank you both for all that you do to make sure that everybody at the college and in the community has a chance to experience what we have to offer. But you're both testament that we keep learning from folks.
Yes, definitely.
And
I want to say thank you really quick, Professor Diaz, because you have definitely kept LASO, the Latin American Student Organization, up and running through the pandemic. We did have a lot of organizations that kind of fell by the wayside, but just kudos to you for keeping our students engaged, keeping them involved, even in the virtual world. We know that was a very hard transition for not only the students, but even faculty, staff as well. We all had to adjust and adapt. So just big kudos to you for keeping the students active, keeping the organization rolling, and being able to sustain through the pandemic and come back full force for Hispanic Heritage Month this year.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate your kind words. And I think at the end of the day, we're really all helping each other, help the students, help the community. So thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Never mind that I wrote that in the script for you, but that is okay. That is okay. I tell you what, let's go to our guests. So we've been using the term Hispanic Heritage Month because that's as it's labeled by the federal government. They've titled it this month. It was voted on by the Senate. I know it was Hispanic Heritage Week for a little bit. But you, in your introductions, you mentioned some of the other terms as well. You mentioned Chicanx, Latinx, and part of self-identity formulation is a big part of psychology. And I would say a theme for this book, that's part of the theme indirectly. Tell us both a little about what that means as far as identity, and what do some of these terms mean from your perspective? Because we got Hispanic on the table because it's right there on the screen. And then you mentioned Chicanx, Chicana, Chicano, Latinx.
Yeah. No, thank you. It is part of that journey we're all on in terms of how we identify and why we identify. And I just want to say, kind of at the foundation of it all, the work that we do, one of the things that we always, try to spread the word about is that it is kind of, psychology is at the foundation of so much of what we do and how we identify. And it typically hasn't been as much part of the conversation because for a lot of reasons it hasn't been as responsive to our community. But when we talk about ethnic studies, and we have all the work of our authors, and we have artists, and we have the historians, but we also kind of the foundation is kind of like the psychology of who we are, right? And so I think that's part of what we try to bring from a Chicano, Chicanx perspective. And so we try to do two things. I mean, we know that there are terms out there that a lot of people use, that a lot of people in our community use. So we understand that. We understand why that's the case. We understand that there are many people in our community who are proud of who they are, and the way they express that true, authentic pride is through the word Hispanic, because that's what they grew up around.
Or Latino.
Or Latino, because that's what they grew up around. And so when we emphasize these other terms like Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx,
Anahuaca.
going back to indigenous. It's never to say, hey, it's never about bringing shame or trying to make anyone in our community kind of feel marginalized yet again, right? So we try to understand that for sure. And when we use the term Latino, Latina, Latinx, we're trying to talk about the inclusivity of all of our peoples of the Americas, all of the peoples that have indigenous roots, and that's been one of the terms that has come about. And for some people, that's a little more of a self-determination as opposed to Hispanic, because that was a term created, by the government, put on us. So, and then we have Chicano, which is a community term, as we know from the 60s. And so that tries to incorporate our indigenous roots as well. It's kind of a term of resistance and pride. And then we're using the X, like Chicanx, Latinx, because we do see that labels are always evolving, and we're trying to be inclusive. We're trying to be inclusive of our brothers and our sisters and our siblings who identify in different ways in terms of their gender identity. And so that's been the X at the end has been one way that our community has tried to not necessarily be the A or the O, but kind of however someone wants to identify who they are. So we try to make sure that we're connecting with everyone that comes across our work. We want to make sure that they feel invited, because when we get down and we start talking, then we see all the commonalities, and we see the learning, and we see the growing. And we don't want someone not to come in the door, so to speak, because we're insistent on a particular way of promoting the work.
All of that being said, though, we did do a 3-part series, which was like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, of just where the terms came from. Where did Latino come from, and Hispanic, and that these names were created and put on us. So there is also a power in naming ourselves, right? We always say, let's take off our Western lens and put on our own cultural lens and decide what we want to call ourselves. Some people like raza, some people don't. Everybody always has, strong opinions about the terms. But so, yeah, we try and be collective and meet everybody wherever we all are, Latino, Hispanic, fine. But we personally don't like those terms, don't feel, those terms were put on us by colonization. There's hours and hours and hours of discussion on the terms. So it's a both and, like everything we talk about. Both, we meet, people come in and say, we call yourselves whatever you would like. And we know the history of the terms and disagree strongly with some of them.
Right. So, when we come in, we're very clear about why we identify the way we identify, why it's important to us. And that's a crucial part of the conversation anytime we get together, because how you identify yourself in the world is how you walk through the world. Is how you show yourself to others, how others see you, and it's how you feel proud of who you are. It's how you feel rooted. It's how you feel grounded. It's how you feel confident.
And we do a lot of work around names, like in the book, House on Mango Street, Esperanza, she had so many opinions about her name and what it meant. And a lot of us have the experience of having to change our name for the dominant culture to make it easier for them to say. And we have, in workshops, just activities where we reclaim our names, right? And and so I love that she uses that theme in the House on Mango Street of the power of the names.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You brought up the House on Mango Street. So I want to read an excerpt. There's actually one of the vignettes. It's called My Name. And I want to remind folks that Lone Star College Houston North wants to give away copies of Lone Star of the House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. We'll also be giving a workshop. I'll be leading a workshop on October 23rd. It'll be free. If folks register, they get a free copy of The House on Mango Street. Educators or community organizers, we're going to raffle off a classroom set of 25 books. And that could be for your community center, could be for your high school library. And that'll be a little more formal. But what I love is you gave a really profound analysis of what identity can mean. In a little bit, I'm going to get Ernesto back on screen. He's going to tell us which term or terms he uses and what they mean to him. But I also want to share how Sandra Cisneros tackles that. And I'm going to read the whole vignette because I also want folks not to be intimidated by the book, because this is a book that you can pick up as designed by Sandra Cisneros at any spot. And this is the section. It's a vignette. So I'm going to read the whole thing just so that you can get a feel for that. But I also want people, you said sometimes we're intimidated by the terms imposed on us. Sometimes our community members are intimidated by the whole idea of the book or the novel.
Right.
This book was created, according to Sandra herself, so that anyone can pick it up at one spot, begin, enjoy, and decide if they want more. This vignette is called My Name. And this is an excerpt from The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. Thank you to the NEA and the Big Read for providing copies of this book. In English, my name means hope. In Spanish, it means too many letters. It means sadness. It means waiting. It is like the number 9, a muddy color. It is the Mexican records my father plays on Sunday mornings when he is shaving, songs like sobbing. It was my great-grandmother's name, and now it is mine. She was a horse of a woman, too, born like me in the Chinese year of the horse, which is supposed to be bad luck if you're born female. But I think this is a Chinese lie because the Chinese, like the Mexicans, don't like their women strong. My great-grandmother. I would have liked to have known her, a wild horse of a woman, so wild she wouldn't marry. Until my great-grandfather threw a sack over her head and carried her off. Just like that. As if she were a fancy chandelier. That's the way he did it. And the story goes, she never forgave him. She looked out the window her whole life, the way so many women sit their sadness on an elbow. I wonder if she made the best with what she got, or was she sorry because she couldn't be all the things she wanted to be? Esperanza. I have inherited her name, but I don't want to inherit her place by the window. At school, they say my name funny, as if the syllables were made out of tin and hurt the roof of your mouth. But in Spanish, my name is made out of softer something, like silver, not quite as thick as sister's names, Magdalena, which is uglier than mine. Magdalena at least can come home and become Neni, but I am always Esperanza. I'd like to baptize myself under a new name, a name more like the real me, the one nobody sees. Esperanza as Lisandra or Maritza or Zizi, the X. Yes, something like Zizi, the X will do. I'm going to bring in Ernesto. Ernesto, definitely want to talk about the book. Again, that's just one short vignette, but you can take the book in these short doses. And I think, too, if you want to talk about this with your family, you got something to talk about there. But Ernesto, what are your thoughts on that chapter? And which of the identity terms do you use? And how did you get introduced to that?
I mean, it's a great book. Like you mentioned, you could connect it in many ways. I think what stood out is, how she resembles herself to the grandmother and how she wants to be different, and not what we kind of grew up as, I could imagine, what she grew up and the stereotypes and what that person was placed into. I remember growing up young, I was told you're going to end up in this place, or you're going to end up like that, or you're going to end up like your father, and actually that's where my name comes from, my dad, and me being a young Latino, young male, I grew up, I hate sometimes the stereotype, but I grew up kind of like in a bad environment, but we learn as the youth, and we learn to be better than our parents are. And I think as a parent, you also want your kids to be better from you and to learn from you. So, this book means a lot. I think it stands out and it connects to everyone. Not only, with the age, but also with the race. You know, this anyone could resemble to what their name means. And I think it's very interesting because I remember growing up, you know, and I know sometimes maybe our speakers have faces, you know, when you go to school and your teacher mispronounced your name, I want to give you kudos, Tony, for bringing that up, you know, and making sure, you know, our speakers, you're pronouncing their names correctly. I remember they would say Ernest or you know, they couldn't do the R, you know, and sometimes, you know, I was correcting them or, you know, sometimes you let it go, but it meant so much, you know, for them to get your name right. So, you know, this is a great chapter. I love the book. I love how it is very short stories, you know, it's easy to read. I actually give it to my 10-year-old daughter and she's halfway through the book. So,
that's awesome.
You know, it is good for everyone to read this book.
That's awesome. And you're right. It's universal, but really hits close to home in so many different ways. Thank you for sharing that, Ernesto. What do you both think about that chapter? Because it touches on some of the things you touched on, but she does it in such a poetic, quick way, no?
Yeah, she really does. I mean, I think I love that she's speaking from the perspective of, you know, her age at that time when she had those ideas. As you can tell, she's talking as that little girl. And which is why she can say things like, "Oh, my Magdalena, that's a much uglier name than my name," and because kids, that's how you experience things. You just feel what you feel, and so I love that she was able to give us that perspective from that, you know, coming from when she remembers being that age, because that I think can tap into all of those feelings that some of us still have as we're adults. It reminds us like, oh, this is something that, you know, has impacted me since I was a kid. And now I'm like, that's why I don't like when someone says my name that way, or that's why maybe I still don't like, you know, my name, and I give, you know, I shorten it and I make it easier for others, which is always an interesting thing. I think it speaks a lot to how our community sometimes always feels like guests, even in their own communities, because we're always, you know, saying a lot of the times like, well, I just, you know, say it a certain way so that it's easier for someone else. I don't want them to feel bad. But we usually don't hear other community members really trying to pronounce our names well because they don't want to make us feel bad, right? And so we're always kind of in this position of trying to make things easier, and we give away parts of ourselves sometimes. And it can be a small thing like a nickname, but it reminds me of more profound ways in which we so easily learn those lessons as a kid to give away parts of who we are, to make it more convenient for others.
And I love that she does bring so many issues into these small vignettes. For example, like identity development at that age, there's actually stages of identity development where the kids become aware of certain things.
Right. You know, they become aware immediately by 3 or 4 of difference in races. You know, whether they say it or not, whether we teach them or not, they're starting to see. And they began already also by 5 o'clock, they already have those gender differences, whether or not they express it or not. So they're already starting to learn these distinctions. They're already starting to learn these differences. And then it becomes part of those stories that we tell ourselves over and over in our own mind. And so then if we have these ways of thinking of ourselves that aren't, you know,
lesser than or problematic,
right?
You know?
Then they can become like seeped into just kind of the tapes that we play back in our mind over and over.
Yeah.
What I really enjoy too is this is nice and messy, and I don't mean that in a bad way. In that this is literature, and her book is nice and messy. And what I mean by that is that when you hear a term novel, she breaks all those rules by design. I've had a pleasure interviewing her, and she delights in smashing those rules. Both of you are bringing a very intellectual, psychological perspective, and you're both administrators. But then you're also bringing your own experiences, which I'm sorry, but we kind of our gente always does that, right? We kind of have to. Yeah,
we do.
And then also there's this historical perspective también, you know?
Right.
Now, you mentioned earlier Nawa. So I want to go back to Nawa, and I want to read the last line of this vignette, because the last line of the vignette, she says something like "ZZ the X will do." Well, fascinating, because makes me think of Malcolm X, makes me think of, you said Latinx, Chicanx, and then right behind you está la X todavía, right behind you in
Yeah.
the image.
That's right.
So we're living a poem here. Tell
I
us
know that.
about Nawa and the role of X, and what that could mean in this work and in our lives.
I think what's funny is the role of X really is like it translates to so many different things for so many different communities with so many different histories. And so let me say, so as some of the students may know, a lot of the times when you learn math, basically the X is always means the unknown, right? It's the unknown factor, which also means they can adapt to anything that it needs to be, right? And so then, like you mentioned Malcolm X, a lot of the reasons why him and a lot of the people from the Nation of Islam at that time, they did that because they didn't want to take on the last names that they typically came with, because those were the names of the slave owners that they inherited, and they weren't connected to their or indigenous tribes. They didn't know, so they started using X as their last name. And so for us, one of the ways we use the X is to kind of uplift and give a shout out, if you will, to our Nahua language. When we talk about in Spanish, we say Mexico because the X sounds like that H, but in Nahuatl, which it's the sh sound. So it would be, if you said it the way our ancestors said it, would be Mexico, right? Mexico. And so that's how the term Chicano came about. We say Chicano like the CH, like Spanish, because that's what the language that began to be used. But it really came from that middle part of Mexico, and it was Chicano. And so that's one of the reasons why we use the X.
And there's things written about it, a form of resistance, right? Like so many things in our culture, in our community, with all these. I like that this is about wellness and connecting it with the book, because there's so many strengths we have as cultural strengths. And two, if you want to go a little deeper real quick, in ancestrally, look, this X is similar to the Nawi Olin. Those words mean, Olin means movement, Nawi is 4. So you have the 4 points, right? Talk about a strong base. And in the middle, that's movement, that's creation, that's our hearts, right? So sacred movement, right? Nawi Olin. And then two, if you're looking down at a pyramid, you have that, the count of Makwili, 5 is very important, right? So you have that strong base of 4, and then the 5th point in the middle, right? Like a pyramid from the top view. So yeah, that's just a little bit about the X. We have so much in our culture that is exciting and that adds to our well-being.
That's what I came here for. All right? that's why I showed up today, to hear some of that. You mentioned math, history, you're analyzing. I think that's a really great way to show how, yes, at the college we want to educate you, but I think we're doing it to get everybody to do their own research, come up to their own conclusions. Is that part of wellness?
Yes, absolutely. Because being able to see yourself and know yourself as a creator, as our people are, as people are, that you can put something out into the world, and that you believe that you can do that. That's that you believe that you can put something out, that you can create your own vision of your life, your own image of how you want your life to be, what you want to share with others, how you want to impact the world, your community. And so when you have that strong foundation and learning about your own self-determination, as we talked about, then that connects completely to our overall wellness, our sense of well-being.
It's transformative to believe in your story, to believe your lived experiences have value, to validate your own voice and your own experience and your own name. It's very empowering to do that. And yeah, like you said, we're learning we're talking here in a non-Western way. We know how to how to do it in the Western way, but also we have our own way, and that is not less valid, right? The way in which we share, we communicate, we have our pláticas, and we use the sacred concept of a circle where everybody is at the same location from each other. There's nobody ahead, there's nobody behind. We're all the same vantage point. All of our voices are equal, and we can all be heard and shout out, you know?
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's a beautiful way in which we share knowledge and stories.
I do want to go back to that because you're touching on some of the arguments we've used to advocate for Mexican American studies, Mexican American history, Mexican American literature. But let's dive into that, because you're saying that this wellness is tied in directly to our ability to succeed in school, and if the way we're given knowledge doesn't match our background, perhaps there's that disconnect that if it's not addressed or approached, well, it could lead to our students appearing to fail. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much so.
I mean, what we know in, we'll talk a little bit more about, the field of Chicano psychology, is, identity development, ethnic identity, cultural identity development is been the most, researched aspect, if the students want to know, of Chicano psychology since, the early 70s. And one of the things that continues to come up is that the more that our kids have a sense of pride in their cultural identity, the more that they are more successful, if you will, academically, right? The more that it also connects to their sense of wanting to contribute to the advancement of their people. And so the numbers are out there. So when we talk about, cultural enhancement programs, integrating cultural history into the curriculum, we, to put it kind of, I guess, very kind of roughly the way we hear it sometimes, it's not just to make our kids feel good about who they are, right? It's not just so that they can, it is that, but it also, the numbers show that it matters in the way they succeed academically. And so if the educational system is really interested in the achievement of all children, then the answer already is there, that kids need to have a reflection of who they are, not only in the pictures, but in the delivery of how we are educated. And if they do that, then they will be able to see what everyone is claiming that they want, which is all children achieving and succeeding to their own potential in their own way.
That should not be seen as a threat, that this would be an amazing way to just do away with the school to prison pipeline and all of these, assumptions that people make about who's going to be successful from a capitalist mindset, who has worth, which of these kids is going to add value, to this country. And all of that is so harmful and damaging. And just including that ethnic identity, it's so necessary to have ethnic studies.
Absolutely.
Well, and to your point, there's a tendency to say, hey, all you Latinos, just pick a name. All right. You guys want to be this or that, just pick a name. But as we've touched on, even in the classroom, this is not a 1 second, 1 minute, 1 semester discussion. I think when I teach Mexican American literature, I narrow it down to just 24 identity labels, and we examine, but kind of like you're alluding to, I don't want to be the one said, this is what you are now, because I think you mentioned it earlier. You don't want to shame folks.
Right.
It sounds like you don't want to take away the identity they've had without leaving something too, perhaps, no?
Right. Absolutely. And again, we know that too, from psychology, the mental health field, is anyone that comes that's struggling with anything, not necessarily, a mental health struggle, but any type of struggle. So identity across the board, questions, struggles. It can do harm, and it doesn't do any good to say you're not that.
Right.
And you take something away
Wow.
And you don't give, and then like whatever someone was standing on, you just knock it out from under them. And then how was that helpful, right? So you have to be able to facilitate a context, a sense, a discussion, a place where people feel that they have, again, that ability to generate for themselves. Is this what I want? Is this, how I want to walk through the world? You're giving me some information. Maybe this isn't how I want to do it, but let's continue talking to see, how can I move forward in a way that now, as I'm learning and unlearning, what feels right for me?
Mm-hmm.
What you have to complete, if we're initiating that education that sometimes is about the history of why we're called what we're called, then if we're as educators putting that out there, then we need to complete that circle.
Yes.
We can't just open this up. We have to be with our
have
students.
An expanded understanding.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
To completion.
Yeah, my personal journey, I used to do what my mom would say, which is claim the Spanish, right? And then I learned a little more. Then I used Hispanic, then Latino, then Chicano. That was my big one, Chicana, and then Anahuaca. So it's been along with Native to just really make that shift in perception that we are native to this Turtle Island, as we call this continent. We are native to this land. And just that understanding alone just opens up more exploration into who we are.
No, I love it. And you know what? I'm going to get to another vignette from the book. I think I might stump you on this one, though. So get ready. But I'm enjoying this.
I doubt it.
And this might be a tangent, and maybe this is not a precise question. I'm enjoying this. So do you counsel folks? And is this what counseling would be like? Like I might come in and just say, man, I'm mad because they can't say my name right. Is this a big deal? Am I wrong in this? So I guess it's two parts. One, is this something we would talk about in counseling? And do you counsel folks? And then would it be this pleasant?
Yeah. Yes. When we talk about what we do, like some other people have said in our discussions, we are talking about mental health and beyond. It's much more than mental health, our what we bring. But specifically, I do do some counseling off and on, depending on what's going on with everything else we have. But I have consistently always seen some folks, and when it comes to our gente, this is definitely something that I talk about all the time. When we talk about the way we do things, and some of the trainings that I give for some of the mental health professionals, one of the ones is always like browning counseling. We have to brown it up, which means that there's a lot to learn from what we know, but there's also a lot of gaps, and sometimes we have to shift. So when our people come in, they come in with some very basic stuff, like these frustrations that they're having, not feeling connected, not feeling welcomed, not feeling understood in the college, in work, in their families. And
imposter syndrome, anger about the racial systems.
So much. Yeah. And so that
racist systems. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is from my perspective, what counseling would look like. And it is different than what we would typically see or think it would be.
We just had a healing circle last night with, what's that organization?
The Austin Latino Coalition.
Austin Latino Coalition, who are burned out. They're angry. They're tired of always trying to have policies that value who we are as a people. They're fighting those battles all the time. And they're seeing how just thrown by the wayside and marginalized our communities are. So yeah, I mean, they exactly what you're saying. They just come with whatever they're experiencing. And then that is what it looks like.
Yep.
That's powerful. And the other thing, so I guess part of the message to our gente is that counseling can be fulfilling, especially if it's done with our histories and culture in mind. So that's powerful. The other thing you're making me wonder is one thing that's addictive to not just being an educator, but also being a student and learning is I get this wonderful, great feeling. I guess it's an intellectual, spiritual adrenaline when I guess I see those missing parts filled in, perhaps.
Yeah.
You feel that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it
All the
feeds
time.
so much. People, when we have the platicas with the community, they come and they're like, I didn't even know how much I was missing this. And that's actually one of the topics we talk about, that we don't even know these powers, these ancestral wisdoms, and just the connection. We're collectivistic people. We don't even know that we were missing those things.
Mhm.
And we talk about tequio, which is where a community comes together. They use it a lot still in Oaxaca and other peoples, communities in Mexico, where you come and you work together, you get something done that the community can use. And then by the end, you're having a meal together, you're laughing together, and that's its own medicine, right? Just creating together something that we can all use. So we're missing a lot of that community, and that is one of our goals, is to create that, and it's what you're doing here, right? We're connecting with the books, with our wellness, with the students, and maybe people who were feeling burnt out or feeling rejuvenated, by like the tamales that we're feeding, the beans that we're feeding, about who we are, about our identity, about our connection. We fill our spirits up.
Yeah.
Well, you're fulfilling our Hispanic Heritage Month to the brim. I appreciate that. Okay, so this is going to be a bonus round, tough round. I'm going to stump you and Ernesto. We're going to get Ernesto back in here. And if
Go, Ernesto.
if anybody watch, I kind of picked a vignette at random, and I should point out as well. I am an educator. I'm the first Chicano to get a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. I've read Sandra's work. I've had the pleasure of smuggling her work into Arizona when they banned it, when we became Gigantes. I actually had the privilege of writing the National Endowment for the Arts Teacher's Guide and Reader's Guide for the Big Read. I'm saying all that because I want to translate to the formal professional world that I know what I'm doing. I'm an expert.
Right, yeah, of course.
But I also love mixing it all up, especially with both of you, Ernesto and Ms. Jones, because we're bringing so many different fields that usually don't touch on each other. And this is how I like it in the classroom. You know what I'm saying? Where, it's not just me leading the show. I want to say, well, what does your tia think of this? And call your tia right now and bring them on in.
Right.
Love it.
All right.
That's so great.
So I will read then a vignette from The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. Thank you to the NEA for helping us spread copies of that book around the city. This vignette is very short. It's called 4 Skinny Trees. They are the only ones who understand me. I am the only one who understands them. 4 skinny trees with skinny necks and pointy elbows like mine. 4 who do not belong here, but are here. 4 raggedy excuses planted by this city. From our room, we can hear them, but Nenny just sleeps and doesn't appreciate these things. Their strength is secret. They send ferocious roots beneath the ground. They grow up and they grow down and grab the earth between their hairy toes and bite the sky with violent teeth and never quit their anger. This is how they keep. Let one forget his reason for being, they'll all droop like tulips in a glass, each with their arms around each other. Keep, trees say when I sleep. They teach. When I am too sad and too skinny to keep keeping, when I am a tiny thing against so many bricks, then it is I look at trees. When there is nothing left to look at on this street. 4 who grew despite concrete. 4 who reach and do not forget to reach. 4 whose only reason is to be and be. Man, Ernesto, the 4 skinny trees. Break it down, brother.
That is strong. And I'm actually from Chicago. So, I could see how those trees and so much obstacles they have, with the concrete, the city. I mean, it's even the storm itself, makes it very difficult for trees. So, once I moved here to Texas, I mean, trees are growing out everywhere here. So I could see it. I mean, it explains a lot. It is a very strong chapter point vignette on it, that it's, besides all those obstacles, they are still growing. They're still growing. Summertime, their leaves are strong. It's a lot that resembles with this. The way I take it personally is, the roots are stronger, and that's where, I guess when you get older, the more you start wanting to know about your roots and what your name is. I remember, I see Chicago Sox. Yes, go Sox. I'm a White Sox from the south side of Chicago, so yes. But the roots, and the more you grow, the more you want to know your roots, the more your roots grow. And I'm experienced that growing up, trying to learn more about my heritage, my family, and more of the background.
That's great. Well, were you an English major?
No, I'm actually an engineering major, so totally opposite field.
But that was good. That was good. Well, and you know what? Jessica and Manuel, even the first line, though, I'm like, okay, wait a second. They are the only ones who understand me. That kind of fits too. What would you take on this chapter? Vignette.
Well, oh man, so many
many
things. Okay, so just real quick, I mean, the image comes out of being in a society where when you just have a few people or the people that understand you, and so many don't. The idea again of the roots being super strong and all the ways she alluded to it, and the trees being skinny, which is that deception. It's very deceptive. And her being a skinny girl, probably everyone makes assumptions of how strong she is or isn't, and probably her family telling her she needs to eat more and be a little more full, and with all of that, you can miss the person themselves can miss all the deep strengths that they have and how powerful that they truly are, just like those trees. And how the city planted those trees there in a place that they weren't really necessarily from, but they had those roots. I mean, so many of our gente, that are first generation immigrant, students that have immigrant parents también, where you see in our community that they may feel like they've been misplaced. They're in a foreign place, but their roots are still very strong and very deep and very connected. And if we look at them, they teach us. They can teach us all of that. And so those are just some of the things that kind of came up for me.
Wow. And then thinking about that, how you said the trees were put there, right? Well, then going a little further back, decolonizing a little bit more, just knowing that in actuality, the trees are from this land, right? So as we say, people, immigrants, actually we just have a lot of migratory people who have always been, and this is our land. So really that displacement is something that's put on Esperanza, put on that neighborhood, and put on those, she may see it reflected in the trees, is that you don't belong here, and all that toughness and all that strength actually does belong there, right? There, that strength, that beauty, those are our sister and our brothers. We're related to now I'm on another point, period. Then also, those are our sister and our brothers. We're a people that are related to everything that is, everything that exists. The stars, the moon are Nanamesli, the sun, Tata Tonatiu. Those trees are our abuelos and our abuelas. Their roots are deep and they touch all four elements. Her heart, our madre's heart, which is the fire that is the core. And then our madre herself, right? The roots. And then the wind, right? So all of the elements are present there, and the water to feed those trees. So, I mean, it's just so much in that little vignette about not belonging, but really, I mean, I don't like to use words like majestic, but something that means majestic of the people who they are. And those trees too, those ugly little skinny trees, if you don't see them in the way in which we can see ourselves, and Esperanza can see herself.
And the strength, I know you probably should go on, just reminding me of something else I was thinking when you were talking, is the strength, the deceptive strength of those trees that aren't noticed. Is again, like our community, and so many of us that are so strong working behind the scenes, right? Working in the kitchens, working in the offices that are not noticed. Right. And still, and still holding up the foundation of so many parts of our society. And again, there you four. Anytime you have 4 points, 4 directions, 4 corners, that's what you build a strong foundation on 4 pillars. And so
so much.
So I mean, yeah, so much we could go on probably.
Oh, please do. But well, I think what's great too is that earlier Ernesto brought up how the book is universal.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like we're touching on is that there's this natural part that's alluded to through the trees that we can all tap into, but the book is very authentically about the main character Esperanza. I feel it is about our community, but what's really a brilliant approach that the writer does, and a writer does this by at some point they have to pick a specific word, right? I mean, you got to write something. You got to pick. The blank page is your enemy, so you got to pick some words. But like Ernesto was saying, the trees in Chicago are different than the trees in Houston. Here, I remember the first time I was in a high rise in Houston, and I was like, it's like a forest. If you've ever been up like 19th floor and you look over here, it's just like Sherwood Forest everywhere. And then I used to spend some time in California, and because of the drought, I remember being out there and it was very dry, and coming back here and being amazed by how verdant it is. So even in the universal, there's specificity to that. How does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. Because it goes again to everything we've been talking about, the importance of roots, being rooted, who you are, the importance of ethnic studies, even for certain communities to know who they are, so that groundedness, when you know who you are, then that's how you relate to somebody else. That's how different communities relate to one another when you know who you are. This is who I am. I'm interested to know who you are. And then that, builds up a sense of community. When you don't have that groundedness, it's hard to truly relate and understand another person's point of view, because you need a point of view to try to connect with, right? And so that rootedness is crucial. And it just what it comes down to a lot of the times is, who are what are the dominant narrative stories that we're so used to that become mainstream, and we forget, like so many authors talk about this, so many stories based out of New York, right? And yet so much of mainstream society all across can easily pick up on the universal themes, but the person writing from New York writes very specific things about New York, and nobody ever questions, like, well, do you need to be from New York to understand that? No, you just assume that is a starting point that's universal. And so Sandra, Cisneros, and so many of our Latino authors, they do the same thing. They're very specific about the place and the space, and the themes then can be universal, but they can also speak to the community from which they come from. And that is done all the time. That's exactly what's done. It's hard to have a piece that you write or where you're not grounded in some type of context, some type of home. You are a story that is not rooted in any particular place, is not going to connect to anybody.
Mm-hmm. And once you know who your roots are, that deception of being diminished as a people, or for Esperanza, she gets a lot of hits. Like another story, she talks about the nun that's like, oh, you're from there, you live there, and she felt bad, So that deception of being a diminished person, lesser than person, it doesn't get by so well or so easily. In fact, it doesn't get by at all. Once you know your ethnicity, you know who you are, you know that root.
Which is part of her skills. One thing I want to point out to folks too, who are either watching now or will watch it later, because I think folks may want to come back and review it just to pick up on some of the history you touched on. Mm-hmm. But I don't want them to get intimidated, because I don't want them to think that you have to have a master's degree or PhD to enjoy this book. I think you are both approaching it with a lot of corazón, a lot of heart. And I think just from the 2 vignettes we've shared, if we have time, I might pick another one at random just to keep us all on our toes. But I think you can see that, just like Sandra Cisneros promised, you can pick this book up at any section. It's got something that, links us to it, but it's very deep. And I think it's something that a student can take back to their family and just start talking to their mom or dad about, or their abuelita about, or their friends about, and start digging in. Ernesto mentioned, he shared it with his 10-year-old daughter. There's some of that there. And I think we also don't understand that we are experts about our communities, which have been overlooked. And our feelings and insights are profound, and they matter. Is this a skill? That itself is, though, a skill, though. No, that's part of well-being, is to have that sort of presence to say, no, my voice matters, my insights matter, and I can experience something deep, even though I don't have a advanced degree.
Whew, that's a very important journey that everybody listening, hopefully that message you just said ripples out, because a lot of us spend a lifetime. I know that struggle being a Chicana, a mother of 3, and at one point when they were little, just having to hustle to make it, to survive, for them to be okay, for me to figure out how to be who I wanted to be. So knowing my voice mattered, I didn't even know how to tell people no. So it's a long journey for a lot of us to realize that we have worth, that we have value, especially when the dominant narratives and the truth makers are saying that we don't have value, that we're criminals, that we're no good. That's internalized depression that you have to work through. So I really love the message you're bringing up.
And we know that a lot of the struggles that many of us have, if we put it in this context, is it's as if it's your story, it's your life, but someone else is writing your life for you, right? And connected to reading and connecting to the stories that Sandra's saying and everyone else, to the students' lives and anyone's lives, it's, that hidden message is, remember that you can be the author of your own story. You are the author of your own story. But there's so many things that kind of push us away from that a lot of the times, and then we look up and someone else is writing our life for us. They're writing our own story. And and that's what happens a lot of times for a lot of us starting in adolescence. You want to be the protagonist. You are the protagonist, but you're not the author. Other people are telling you who your life is, and it's that struggle to then reclaim your own authorship, be your own voice in your own story.
It's powerful. Ernesto, can you tell folks too, that they don't have to have a PhD or be connected to the college, or an educator or faculty member, staff member with the college, to bring this book into the community?
No, Tony, and you are correct. We have this book available in all 4 of our locations at the Houston North Library. So if you're a community member, if you're a student, feel free and stop by any of our 4 locations, the Greenspoint, our Fairbanks location, our Victory, or even our Fallbrook, and just stop by the library and pick yourself a copy. We would also have a list of events that we have coming up. So please, I encourage everyone to attend. I know we talked a little bit of the Zumba event coming up. I do want to mention we have 2 big final events. One of them is what we call like a block party. Kind of reminds me back in home where we would have a block party, a community, people would bring out food. But we're also going to be celebrating El Día de los Muertos, which is, remembering our loved ones. So this event is going to be on October 29th. From 7 to 9:30 at our Fallbrook location. So we're gonna have a celebration. We're gonna have tacos, gorditas, aguas frescas, even cocas mexicanas. It's gonna be a full-out celebration. But also we're gonna host. We're having a drive-through movie. So we're gonna be showing the movie Coco. So if you have not seen it, it is a great movie. It is one of my favorite movies already. But that's gonna be one of our big events. And then to finalize our Big Read grant, we're going to have an evening with Sandra Cisneros. This event has turned virtual, working with the Alley Theater, and we're going to have Sandra Cisneros have what we call like pláticas, charlas and pláticas. So, we're going to have conversations, obviously talking about the her new book, Martita, and also the House on Mango Street. So it is a good event that we're having. I want to welcome each one of you to stop by any of our 4 locations and pick up a copy. Also, if you sign up right now, there was a link provided on Facebook Live. Sign in, put in your information, and we're also going to see if we can get you a copy. So, there's many ways to get yourself a copy. I have several books. Feel free and just, come on over.
That's awesome. And we have a message from we are here at Houston North Fairbanks, ready with copies. All right, that's Bernice Klink. Awesome. Look at that. Look at that. Fairbanks is bending over backwards. Hey, Bernice may be a possible faculty advisor for LASO. We need a faculty advisor. So shout out. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for welcoming folks. You know what, too, Ernesto, you're reminding me. So we've mentioned a lot. I'm really happy to have these 2 really smart folks teaming up with us today. We've touched on a lot of things. I don't want people to get discouraged. No se desanimen, no se agüiten, because we're kind of bringing some heavy topics in. But here's the awesome part. This book shatters all those barriers. If you get this book into your hands, you sit down with your sister or brother, a cousin, and just talk about that. You've shattered all those barriers. And maybe you're beginning your family library or restocking it, but that goes a long way. And even if you think you're too young to be a leader in your family, of course, you may already be one. You might not realize you are. There are younger kids watching you, and they think you're cool. They think that you are, changing the world. If they see you holding a book, it's going to register. They may not say it out loud that that's what they should be doing too. So I'm really excited that each of our locations is ready to help spread the word. So thank you for reminding us of that, Ernesto. How many copies we have? We only have like 20 copies to give away or something, or 30? How many do we have?
So for the grant, we were awarded and we were able to get a good deal. So we got over 700 copies. Houston Public Library is also getting 250 copies. And the rest is for us to give. So, I know we're working with the alley, we're working with the community. So there's several copies. I wish I could just move my camera. You can see all the boxes on the background. Don't worry about the copies running out. We have several available.
That's exciting. So, hey, we are serious about this, And the other thing I want to stress too, no matter at what point during this campaign that you get the book. So Ernesto mentioned some events that are going on this week. He mentioned November 8th is the final event for this big campaign. I don't want you to feel as if on November 8th you get the book that you've missed out. Not at all. Not at all. We are trying different techniques to overcome the barriers that are keeping our communities from the books and their voices. And we want to make sure that you feel comfortable. So if it happens on the last day of this campaign and it's November 8th that you get the book and get to see the remote visit with Sandra Cisneros, that is a major literary moment that your family can experience, and that I want all of our community members to just understand that that's something that they can enjoy all the time. That's part of their well-being. I want youth to grow up thinking, yeah, that's what we do. That's what mi gente does. Yeah, and that could be a fun way to do it. Let me ask our professional psychology intellectuals here. Is it accurate for me to say that a book, the little old book, can overcome all these barriers we've talked about?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I mean, everything that you said is exactly what changes these ways of being, these ways of perceiving, what we want to be, how we can be, what feeds our soul. So yeah, getting that out there, reading this book, sharing it, making it a part of what we do with each other, with our familias, can definitely feed our soul and just increase that sense of wellness that we have, for sure.
And as a mama, all the time I plant seeds that I don't necessarily think are going to take, and I'm surprised that later, even sometimes 6 months or a year, they take, you know? So like, I'll be like, oh, I got to read. Fine, I'll read. And no, I don't want to. I still do it. And before you know it, you know, that seed is taken. So it's about planting seeds. And really, there's one of our ancestral terms, ometeo, the coming together of two sacred energies. So you just come together with a book or with reading. You don't have to have, you know, great, profound thoughts, although you probably do. We just need the confidence in our voice to say them, right? In fact, in one of her vignettes, she talked about this little boy. And I love her language as a little girl. She's like, he's normally stupid. He's normally dumb. But he said the most wise thing about the cloud. He said the cloud is God. And you know what? We don't have to speak in a elevated language. No, we say what we say. It comes out how it comes out. And what is there is what needed to be there. So you just come to a book and you've created something.
Yeah.
Love it. And actually, one other tool. So as I mentioned earlier, and I'm not bragging, I'm just trying to get people to all the tools here. I wrote the teacher's guide and reader's guide for the House on Mango Street for the NEA. I hope people will use that tool. I'll be giving a workshop on October 23rd, which is just a little bit more formal on saying, hey, here's how you can take this book into a classroom or a community center. But I also want people to feel as if they can get to that information. Of course, we've been working so hard, my camera just gave out, so I'm gonna change the battery. So can you still hear my voice though?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Perfect. Very dramatic. Very dramatic.
You did that on purpose.
That's right, exactly. For dramatic effect. I'm gonna pose a question and then go off screen and let you let all three of you answer this. But so what I noticed about the book is that it's really stood the test of time. It was published around 1986. So what 14 plus 21, about 35 years ago. We were talking about identity. This book is very much about the Latino experience. She's a Chicana, but she doesn't mention the term Latino, Hispanic, or anything throughout the book. So let me ask, we'll start with Ernesto and then we'll ask Jessica and Manuel, how in the world can this book be about Latinos, Latinx, Chicanos, whatever we want to call ourselves, and never mention those terms?
I mean, I want to say Sandra, the author, Sandra Cisneros, does a wonderful job. I mean, I think just being a Latino, a Hispanic, a Latinx, I mean, you're able to kind of familiarize yourself with certain things that she has, even with the chanclas or certain things that she points out that kind of connects you. Like, yes, I remember, you know, my aunt, uncle, you know, my dad, or certain things you could connect with. But that's one of the things that this book is universal, because you connect with everyone. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, the Hispanic culture. We know how the name is very important in different cultures. So, you know, she does a wonderful job where anyone could connect to, but I think she does put little things out there that you can resemble to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because we're not a label, right? We are who we are. We're not an academic experience. We are the comal. We're the petate, which is like a mat. We are the aguacates. We're the comida. We're the chancla. We're all those experiences that you were just talking about. That's who we are. We're coming together. We're collective. We're all these beautiful things. So I very much love that she doesn't, you know, use any specific labels, because it is our experience that she's writing.
And again, you know, so many of the stories from the perspective of being a child, that's reality. That's how we are. We talk about the experiences we have with our family and our cousins that she mentions, and Theo, and that's how we think of ourselves. And if you're going to write about, you know, the things that that we experience, we don't always throw in like those self-identifying labels because it already is. I mean, you don't think of it any other way when you're growing up. You think that is your life. Your life is, and you describe it with what you see, what you hear, what you smell. And so, like, she talks the way we talk. She talks the way our kids talk.
Love it.
I'm going to call it Ernesto's chancla effect. That's what it is. I love the way you put it. We are coming in. We only have about 10 more minutes. Really, I've had a wonderful discussion. This to me feels like a great class. Hey, if you are watching this and you haven't been in a classroom in a while, this is why I get addicted to the experience, because it's we're all really so deep and profound. I mean, for whatever reason, I might be at the front of the class, but it should be a circle, or I'll get to the back of the class because everybody has something to offer. Ernesto, before we go, remind us and the folks of some other events that are coming up, because I want to make sure that we give everyone a chance to enjoy all the experiences.
So I just want to remind everyone, we're going to post this on our Facebook account on Houston North. So don't try to write everything down, but just wanted to point out some upcoming events. Like I mentioned, the Houston Public Library, it's going to do a virtual with Sandra Cisneros. That's going to be on Wednesday, September 22nd from 6 to 7 p.m. And they're going to be talking about their new book, Martita. We're also going to have a salsa event at the Houston Fallbrook. So if you want to learn salsa, or at least get some lessons ready, this is going to be part of our Latin American student organizations here at Houston North. We're going to have a salsa dancing at the parking lot at our Houston North Fallbrook location. And then our libraries are going to have 4 discussions. And those are going to be on campus, but we also want to provide that opportunity virtual. And they're scheduled to be, the first one is September 28th. So next Tuesday coming up from 12 to 1. And then we have our Wednesday 29 is going to be the next one. This one's going to be at the Flores Library. And this one is Contraband Pros Read Aloud. And I think Tony is going to be talking about his story of back in the days, how he used to sneak the book House in Mango Street in Arizona. So do you want to tell us a little bit more on that, Tony?
Sure. No. Arizona banned Mexican American Studies, and one of the wonderful books in that curriculum was The House on Mango Street, and students were basically having wonderful discussions like this on a regular basis in the schools, and then administrators banned it. So here in Houston, Texas, myself and 4 veterans of Nuestra Palabra Latino writers having to say, we said, you know what, if you're going to ban our history and culture, we're going to smuggle it back into the classrooms. And we organized an 8-city caravan, and people donated $20,000 worth of books. We started underground libraries. More than anything, though, like you were saying earlier, Jessica and Manuel, we made sure that our voices were heard, and we made it clear that, no, this book is not a threat. This book is important, and our voices are important. So our community came together, and what's wonderful is that un-American law was overturned, and basically then that began a movement to get more Mexican American studies into the classroom. So we'll be talking about that. It'll be with there were 5 of us founders. This will include Diana Lopez, Brian Paras, and the 2 other founders are Lupe Mendez and Laura Acosta Razo. So that's going to be fun, though.
Cool.
So I have one question. Do you think we can transform our Tejano moves into salsa? Because we only know Tejano dancing.
Nice. I think so. Hey,
challenge.
I love it. Vale.
Sounds good.
Please be part of the party.
Now we have to practice.
Yeah.
I do want to remind everyone, all these events are free. So it's open for the student, the community. So you don't have to pay anything. Actually, by the end of the day, if you join any of these events, you're going to end up with a book, The House on Mango Street. So come to the event and pick yourself a copy and enjoy and do some salsa / Tejano.
I love it. We got about 7 minutes left. I know we have just dwelled on just some of the introductions to a lot of the work you do. Anything else you'd love to let our community know about the work that you do in your institute?
Well, I think that one of the, what we're always trying to do is connect with our gente to see what their experiences are, give them a space to talk through that, be in community, like this plática that we're having, and like we said, we bring our experience to kind of get the discussion going, but we never feel like we have the answers. In fact, what we try to do is we try to get that storytelling going. We try to get those, that plática going, that discussion going, so that we can share with each other and begin to see that we can figure these things out for ourselves, right? We can, these struggles that we're having, you know what? I bet you for all those stressful stories we come with, we try to dig into those other stories that we have in our familias, in our community, where other people kind of overcame something, and then we share it with each other. So when we come together, it's always about, all right, let's try to find out those things about the way we live, the way our parents, our grandparents lived, that can help us now with what's happening. So we try not to do too much of, like bringing in teaching a lot of other things. We kind of try to like, all right, let's remember, as Jessica always says, let's reconnect and remember all that beautiful stories, all those beautiful stories that we have, and those things that we have faced. And oh yeah, I remember that they did that, and I remember my mom did that, and I remember my tío did that. And that's the kind of things that comes together, that happens.
We try to connect to healing too together, and to our wellness, because we're moving towards flourishing, not just trying to survive, not just trying to resist all these terrible systems, but flourishing. And we do that for our children. We do that to heal 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. We are of this land. We walk with our ancestors. So if we can connect with those strains, then we can better live in our wellness. We always say wellness is an act of resistance, and raising a healthy family, if you're a family of color, is a revolutionary act, right? So that's what we move towards. We bring the psychology and the medicine.
Yeah. We really focus on where people are coming from, because there's a lot of wisdom there. There's a lot of wisdom, and sometimes we don't recognize our own wisdom a lot of the times. And so we just try to clear some of those cobwebs aside, so that wisdom can show up, and then we can lift each other up. We always talk about it's about living brown and living well. That living brown is living well, and so we try to have that appreciation for all that our cultura brings to our lives, and uncover and remember that. Maybe sometimes we have to see it in a different way, but we do that together as a community.
Fantastic. Well, really was a pleasure to get to visit with both of you. I look forward to our paths crossing again and again and again and again. So first of all, aplausos para ustedes. And we really hope that everyone will take advantage of this opportunity to get more art, cultura, literatura into your homes and communities. Ernesto, any parting words for folks?
Just want to say it's a pleasure meeting you, Dr. Zamarripa, and Ms. Zamarripa. I think this is a beginning of other conversation or discussions. Tony, great job in hosting this. I want to once again thanks Houston North, our Big Read National Endowment, for allowing us for this grant opportunity to host multiple events throughout the Houston North location and the Houston area, and especially give out the book to the community. So want to say thank y'all. It's a pleasure meeting y'all, and look forward to working with y'all again.
Yeah, it was great meeting you, Ernesto. Great. Thank you, Tony.
Gratitude for all of you, for the work you're doing, and for all of your hearts present. Yes. Thank you.
Unidos. Thank you so much, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Bye.